Hi there, Debbie Hahn with IADT. My instructor is Kelly Cassidy, and this is for interpersonal communications. This was actually due Sunday, but it's been taking so many takes. The last time it actually rejected the video because I supposedly went over the limit. Anyway, here goes. In 1971, the Wild Free Rowing Horses and Burros Act was signed into law by President Richard M. Nixon on December 18, 1971. The act made it a crime to harass or kill horses and burros on federal lands. It also required the Department of Interior and Agriculture to protect them, required studies of the animals' habits and habitats, and permitted public lands to be set aside for their use. Also, in addition to the protection, these horses and burros on a federal level, it also required them to be protected as living symbols of the historic and pioneer spirit of the West. And that management plans must, quote, maintain a thriving natural ecological balance among wild horse populations, wildlife, livestock, and vegetation, and to protect the range from deterioration associated with overpopulation. Although the Bureau of Land Management was also permitted to close public lands for livestock grazing, feral horse ranges were principally for the protection of the horses, but the land was also required to be maintained for multiple uses. But notice in the first statement that I said that they must maintain a natural, thriving ecological balance and to protect the range from deterioration associated with overpopulation. The numbers aren't clear, but by 1900s, apparently there were 2 to 5 million Mustangs in the United States. However, their numbers were in steep decline due to domestic cattle and sheep that competed with them for forage and water. It was only after the mid-1930s their numbers were seen to have fallen drastically due to the intervention of the United States government. The BLM in the United States Forest Service began to remove horses from federal lands. The two agencies were only concerned that there were too many horses on the land, which they said led to overgrazing and significant soil erosion. Another quick pause here and point out that they're only worried about the horses being too many and not the cows and the sheep. Responsible culling is necessary to maintain a healthy herd, yes, as they are responsible for maintaining healthy herd numbers of these horses and a good balance of horse to cattle to wildlife on the range, including vegetation. Yet they're just saying the horses are too many. Continuing on. MNN.com /eco-glossary defines federal lands as expansive as 256 million surface acres. It does not specify how many acres were allotted to the wild horses, only that they themselves were included in the occupancy of public federal lands. Though any horse owner will tell you 5 acres to 1 horse. Quick math question. How many horses can inhabit 256 million acres comfortably and still allow for a healthy ecological balance between wildlife, and there still be room for ranchers to pay for the grazing rights? Someone messed up on their math on down the road. An article on Horseback magazine published June 12, 2011, and yes, you can find this online, by Stephen Long says, naturalists call BLM's 21-to-1 cow to wild horse ratio outrageous and highly illegal. Why is it illegal? Let's go back to the Wild and Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act of 1971. Veteran journalist puts it perfectly, as exact wording, oddly, debates both within the decision-making process and politics remains based more on myth and hatred, rather than respect, concern, reality, or compassion. The realities or facts of the issues approached complacently at best with no consideration given them, do exist but not included. Excerpt from article titled Wild Horse Herds, Wolves, Hatred, and Psychosis. Humanity Must Win the War Over Hatred. And that was written April 28, 2013 by photographer and journalist. In the same website, there's another article that was posted April 25th, same year. It's the BLM budget reasoning for 2013. You can find this at doi.gov. Got time to scan through it? I did, and it shows no concern for the wild horses except more removals. The author wrote a note under this posted link on veteranjournalist.com, and he stated direct figures of yearly cost and how they only pay less than $1.50 per unit. That's actually $1.35 per 1 cow or 1 calf. While commercially, rates per unit reach $85. Welfare ranching costs $450 million just to administer the program. In short, they're ripping off the taxpayer dollar, big time. And who's expected to pick up the slack? The taxpayer. The logic is somewhat like saying 2 plus 2 equals fish. It will never add up. Plus, you have the BLMs always seeming to come up with $2 million plus for a helicopter. That's not counting what they pay contractors, when it's just not in the budget. Not only that, they expect you, the American taxpayer, to foot the bill for the upkeep of each horse that they have taken into their custody in captivity in these holding pens. Last I checked the figures, assuming your horse is totally healthy, no issues, well, aside from breeding your mare, and the most generalized care for one horse can be anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000 a year. That's including the feed, supplemental roughage for when they can't or do not have access to grass or pasture. That's round bales and square bales, and including stall upkeep, assuming you board, and a farrier bale every 6 months. Then you have state representatives like Sue Wallace of Wyoming, Legislature Representative, House 52, affectionately known to many equine advocates as Slaughterhouse Sue. Many articles are written on this topic. Just go to rtfitchauthor.com and do a search, Sue Wallace. There's about 6 articles on her. Long story short, among the politicians, she's only in it for her own gain. Wants a slaughterhouse to be owned by her company so she can benefit financially. Wait, aren't there ethical laws I have to follow? I'm pretty sure conflict of interest is one of them. In short, she swears up and down on all around that horse meat is safe for human consumption. What she fails to realize is that eating even a domestic U.S. horse is about as healthy as eating meat pumped full of DDT. Due to routine vaccinations, painkillers, parasite-killing agents, wormers, and including fly sprays, that's not including if your horse is used for sport. And then there's a whole slew of illegal and legal performance enhancing drugs that are still used today. The same can be said about Dave Duquette. Though he's not as intelligent when he tries, bless his heart, he really does try to discredit known activists such as R.T. Fitch and Simone Netherland. Tim Sappington also had worked for the slaughterhouse in New Mexico when he shot a video of himself blatantly killing a horse on camera and telling the animal activists what they can do with themselves. He sparked a worldwide outrage when he addressed the activists with the F-bomb and then at point blank range shot the horse clean in the head. It wasn't about the horse being shot in the head. Undeniably, he died a humane death versus what he would have died from in a slaughterhouse. Whether or not it was on his own property, however, is debated. What sparked the outrage was the morality of himself, number one, filming himself in the act, and when you gotta admit the venom he carried towards the animal activists is pretty heavy. Number two, he alleged killing the horse for food. But if that's all it was, why would you film yourself unless you're trying to send a message? I'm pretty sure eating horses loaded with birth control also has ramifications to human health. I'm referring to the birth control darts, PZP, that they shoot the wild mustangs with to control the populations. Oh, FYI, as I speak, they're doing research to resort to spaying mares in the field now. I mean the BLM. But if they do that, bute is going to be used as a painkiller. Which of course brings me to this issue. Any meat found with traces of this drug in processing plants, it's condemned and burned. Do not use in animals meant for human consumption. And if they don't use painkillers, which bute is most effective after anesthesia, looks like a 4th lawsuit will be tacked on to the 3 that are already against them in federal court. Animal abuse seems to be the theme. For more information on those 3 lawsuits, go to wildhorseeducation.org. A medical test was performed during the adulterated meat scandal that racked the United Kingdom, also known as Burgergate, because they were finding horse meat mixed with beef in packages labeled as beef. In the abstract, it states that one of the main risks for ingesting meat that has been adulterated with bute include idiosyncratic blood dyscrasia. That's a blood disease. No specification on that. Also, genotoxic and carcinogenic potential, though they mention developing aplastic anemia is rare, according to the European Medicines Agency, who released the study. With slaughter re-legalized in the U.S. and Oklahoma getting ready for its own slaughterhouse, New Mexico is only looking for inspections to allow horse slaughtering. One can only wonder what the BLM's real intentions are for holding 3 out of 5 wild mustangs in holding facilities while ranchers move their business on the public lands on the cheap. Another thing you want to know about how harsh the slaughterhouse is for horses in the communities? From a financial and environmental standpoint, I want to bring up Dallas Crown and Kaufman, Texas. This is a slaughterhouse that is foreign-owned by Belgium, that at one time had intake of equine for processing in their plant before it was banned in 2006. The ban was only 5 years old before it was lifted. I mean the slaughtering of horses before President Obama signed it back into law. Now I bring it up because they were not only a financial burden, but also because they were a heavy environmental burden on the city. Poor and open disposal of offal piled high and drew ever-present flies, and there were no disposal cautions when taken for the blood that they drained from each horse. It threatened water supplies in the general area. They were pumping toxic horse blood into the city's sewers. So much for the fact that it busted pipes and was filling people's bathtubs and sinks. Horses carry about twice as much blood as one cow. So for every 300 gallons of bovine blood, that's about 600 gallons of equine blood. They paid next to no taxes. Dallas Crown only paid $5 on a gross income of $12 million. That's when their tax records finally came to light after a 20-year battle of litigation of violations with the plants. According to former mayor of Kaufman, Texas, Paula Bacon, $5 million in federal funding was spent annually to support 3 foreign-owned horse slaughter plants, which just meant not only Dallas Crown and Kaufman, but Bell Texan, Fort Worth, and Covell in DeKalb, Illinois. You could read more about this little fiasco on Forbes.com. The article is 5 pages long. But here's a glimpse of how bad things got. Just over one 6-week period, Dallas Crown was issued 29 citations for wastewater violations, each of them bringing fines of up to $2,000 each. I'll let you do the math on that one. Dallas Crown responded to these violations, wanting 29 separate jury trials. Legal expenses consumed over 20% of the city's revenue. This was in '07. The plant was shut down February of that year. Because Kaufman could not afford to litigate, the fines went unpaid. Bacon went on to say that during a period of 19 months from 2004 to 2005, there were 481 violations. Dallas Crown refused engineers entry to do an environmental testing for 9 months. In short, it is devastating for communities when people even think about bringing such an ideal as horse slaughter to town. It's abuse, plain and simple, not only to the horses, but to the locals that end up putting up with it on the financial and environmental abuse as well. A horse recovers about half a minute after being struck in the head. That's assuming you get a clean shot with that captive bull. And there's no way to hold them. Horses struggle by nature. And because of this, horses are aware of being slit in the throat and bled out after being hung upside down by the leg. The financial toll is about as burdensome as carrying a pallet of concrete bricks on your back. There's no budget for it. And there's not even a demand. Not even since the United Kingdom issued a ban on all horse meat imported from the United States once Burgergate had finally gotten under control. More and more people are becoming wise to what is really going on. A recent poll conducted by the ASPCA and the USHS showed that over 80% of Americans are against the slaughtering of horses. And with how much of an uproar this caused in the UK, their actions even speak louder than words. Companies like Tesco and Burger King were caught, and cases of meat were quickly disposed of. Princess Kate Middleton herself grew upset about the meat scandal. Being pregnant, switched to an all-vegan diet. The adulterated meathead she consumed would risk spontaneous abortions. A royal aborting a baby? We would have never heard the end of that one. Horse slaughters was America's dirty little secret. What really happened behind the scenes if racehorses didn't win or stallions failed to perform after having finished their racing career. Horses such as Little Clip in a 2-part HBO special shown in 2008, and another documentary shown on horse abuse, Wild But Not Free, shown by NBC. Well, in a large nutshell, this is my stand. It's wrong, there's no justification, it's abusive of not only to the animals, but the range, it's abusive in power, and it's financial abuse beyond what the government has shown since electing President Obama into office. Under him, the deficit has reached an all-time high, more than quadrupling. If he pulled his big-eared head out of his tail and reined this in, I bet you anything, making the Cattlemen's Association and ranchers accountable to the fees that they owe, raising grazing fees on federal lands, and limiting to how many head a herd, including sheep, sanctioning the BLM and making them more accountable to the contractors they hire, and making them accountable to what they sell to people like Tom Davis. I urge you, there's a bill in office right now, H.R. 1094 and Senate Bill 541, called the Safeguard American Food Exports. Not only will it end horse slaughter permanently, but if it passes, it will end this abuse, period.